Three Christian themes in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. I had recorded a podcast earlier in the week after I saw the movie, and I got a new mic. If you can't tell, and this mic mutes very easily. If you tap that, it mutes. So I could be talking and I could be harmlessly recording a podcast, and my hand can touch it, and then it's muted, and you can't hear me. And in fact, I was just doing a take of this and I touched it again. So I'm not going to touch this again. I'm going to leave it right here. If you can't tell, the background behind me is a little different today. I'm actually on vacation up in the mountains in a cabin with the family. I even got a little vacation no shave going on. But all the kids are in bed. It's late. And I finally had a chance to come down to the basement of the cabin and record something. I hear the crickets outside. It's wonderful to be back in Georgia, my home state, and the greatest state in the continental U.S. So, Christopher Nolan is the biggest movie director in the world right now, and there might be some guy in Bollywood or China or something that gets like more. I don't care. I mean, it's not like I don't care. I don't care. Um, when Christopher Nolan makes a movie, I'm not saying he's the best director. I don't think he is the best director. Um, I don't like his movies as much as I like other people's movies. But when he makes a movie, um, everything stops. Have you noticed this? Everything stops. It is like an asteroid that lands in the middle of pop culture, and everything must stop and give it an account of itself. It's Judgment Day. It's apocalypse. And I think that that is something that he has earned um, through hard work, through crafting a brand for himself, and he deserves it. Uh, his movies have so much attention to detail, visual attention to detail that um, there really are these kind of spectacles that you just have to go, and you not only have to go see it, you have to go see it in the theaters. I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about what he's doing is he's bringing back, um, even Marvel uh, was getting to the point where it felt like you could just watch it later when it came out on streaming. Like there wasn't like a rush. I remember I've got 6 kids. I don't go to see many movies. I did see Despicable Me 4. I saw both of the Super Mario movies. I saw um I don't know any of those. I go see those movies. I don't see movies for myself anymore. The last movie I saw for myself was Endgame. That was like 6 years ago. Um, but then when The Odyssey came out, I just thought I have to go see this. It's required. Um, and you do have to see it in the theater, I think. It's a beautiful film, an amazing spectacle. All of the stuff that he does with camera and the lenses and the IMAX cameras that they had to build. It's all weird, but the shots and the whole just experience is cinematic. And so I have to give him credit for that. Now, I don't think Christopher Nolan is that good. I think he's really good at a couple things. Um, and I think sometimes when you're really good at a couple things, other things begin to fall apart. And a director has to be really good at everything to be amazing. And what I mean by that, think about in sports when a coordinator becomes a head coach. Like a defensive coordinator becomes a head coach. Well, sometimes that works. Sometimes, though, they are so focused on this one thing that they don't necessarily have the ability to translate that to running the whole organization because they didn't expect to have to run the whole organization. They were really good at coaching a defense, and all of a sudden when they become a head coach, they have to deal with not only the whole team, defense and offense and special teams, but also administration, organization, recruiting, like massive recruiting things, raising money for building things, all fun dealing with fundraising and donors and there's so many more things that a head coach has to deal with that a defensive coordinator might not always translate. And so you have a guy who's like really good, and their defenses are. I mean, this was like Will Muschampe's problem. Not that you guys care. You don't care about sports. You're watching a theology podcast. You don't care about sports. But this was like Will Muschampe's problem. His defenses when he was at Florida, South Carolina, his defenses were always good, but he just couldn't run the whole program. Anyways, I think Nolan is a great cinematographer. I think he cares so much about the camera, about the image that is being captured. I question sometimes if the rest of the uh, film director thing is there. I think his movies are always um, missing a couple things, and ultimately, I think he is a pretty cynical director as far as storyteller goes. His movies are kind of hollow. They um, Roger Scruton once described Thomas Kincaid as someone as he described him as kitsch because he had all technique with nothing to say. Great technique with nothing to say. So Thomas Kincaid had that famous the painting with the lights. It had lights, and it has and I remember looking at Thomas Kincaid paintings as a kid or um, 6 months ago, and thinking this is amazing. This is art. Like this is the cool, and because it's visually cool. It's awesome. I mean, it's well done. But Scruton's point is that it has nothing to say about the world. It's good. It's excellent technique. Um, but it's not capturing the world as it actually is, nor is it translating the world or saying something true about the world. Think about like Van Gogh's Starry Night. Is that capturing the night as it is, the sky as it is? No. No, it's not like a direct, but it's saying something about the world. And Kincaid is kind of just puts this idealized, nice, clean version of the world out that uh, just doesn't say anything. And I think Nolan's close to that. Amazing technique. I mean, just deeply skilled at what he does. But ultimately, I find his movies to be heartless, soulless, and relatively inhuman. And that's as nice as I'll be on here. Now, the three Christian films that I told you I would look at, there will be spoilers in this. So if you haven't seen the movie, go and see the movie because it is actually a really good movie. I would give it 3 Thomas Cramners out of 5 Thomas Cramners. That's not bad. 3 Thomas Cramners is not bad at all. It is the highest rated movie on the Evangelical Anglican ever. It holds that title. Now, the three Christian themes that I found that stuck out to me in the movie were first, obviously the law. They talk about Zeus's law, kind of over and over and over again. Um, and I think it is a interesting take on the do unto others as you would have them do unto you, to love your neighbor as yourself. Um, and it's interesting because um, it implies a couple things. One, it implies that pagan religions cared at all about how you treated one another as far as the gods go. The gods in pagan religions did not care how you treated a stranger who walked through the door. If anything, Zeus's law was not a divinely given law that if you cross it, you incur divine judgment, but rather a human law um, that said treat everyone as a stranger because if you accidentally mistreat a stranger and he happens to be Zeus, you're in trouble, right? So I think it's a Christianized. Sometimes people say that there's like it's like borrowed capital. They don't realize they're getting it from Christianity. I'm not talking about people say it's a Christianized version because it's love your neighbor, it's the golden rule. I'm not talking about that. I think that they know that's kind of a Christianized version of that. I think the whole idea that the gods would care at all what you did to the people of Troy is a Christianized idea. The idea that the gods care how you treat those weaker than yourselves is a totally borrowed idea from Christianity. Ancient gods did not care how you treated the people you had victory over. They didn't care. You could do whatever you want. The way pagan gods worked was, as long as you make things right by me, I frankly don't care what you do with other people. It was actually a distinctly Christian idea um, that God connected the love of neighbor and the love of God together, that these two things are linked to one another, not only in Christ's summary of the law, that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And the second is like unto it, as we say in the Anglican prayer book, and as Jesus said, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, but also in the Decalogue, how the table of the 10 commandments, or the two tables of the 10 commandments, have both laws over governing our relationship with God and seamlessly kind of moving through laws that govern our relationship with one another. Our God, the Christian God, cares about how you treat the least of these, those below you. That's not, um, pagans might have upheld that as some kind of virtue, how you treat, magnanimity or something, but they didn't see that as like, if you aren't magnanimous, the gods might come after you. Now, if you start getting too haughty, the gods might try to, destroy you or something. But the idea that the gods care at all how you deal with anybody is a pretty Christian idea. I actually noticed this recently in Psalm 15. I'm going to read from the 1928 Book of Common Prayer. So this is the Coverdale Psalter, which is the best Psalter. It says, Lord, who shall dwell in thy tabernacle, or who shall rest upon thy holy hill? Even he that leadeth an uncorrupt life, and doeth a thing which is right, and speaketh the truth from his heart. We could say, okay, who can go and dwell with God? He that leadeth a pure life and is a good person. All right, we can go with that. But what does that mean? What does it mean to be a good person? Well, God in Psalm 15 connects that. If you want to dwell in my holy hill, now pagan gods would have said, you pay me off. That's how you dwell in my holy hill. You bring me what I want, and you can come on up. As long as you pay me, you come on in. Now, you can never get all the way up to where they are. You'll never get there, but you can kind of come into the temple and hang out, and just make sure you have the money. It's like Tony Soprano. Anyways. So what is required? Verse 3, he that hath used no deceit in his tongue, nor done evil to his neighbor, and hath not slandered his neighbor. He that setteth not by himself, but is lowly in his own eyes, and maketh much of them that fear the Lord. He that sweareth unto his neighbor, and disappointeth him not, though it were to his own hindrance. He that hath not given his money upon usury, nor taken reward against the innocent. Whoso doeth these things shall never fail. In other words, God connects. If you want to dwell on my holy hill, treat your neighbors. Don't with respect and love and charity. Do not slander them. Do not bear false witness against them. Do not covet or usury is a kind of a form of coveting. But do not be greedy and take advantage of your neighbor. In other words, what God connects is, if you want to dwell on my holy hill, treat your neighbor, your fellow Israelite, with love. And that's a uniquely Christian idea. And so the law in the Odyssey is kind of a Christianized version of it, um, but I don't totally think realize it's a Christianized version of it because the gods are judging based on how, or at least Odysseus believes the gods have judged based on their sins in the Battle of Troy, which is a pretty Christian idea. Secondly, um, salvation for Odysseus comes by giving up. Salvation for Odysseus comes by giving up. There's that part at the end of towards the entering into the final act of the movie where Calypso tells him to finally go. And I thought this whole character didn't make sense. Uh, I didn't get Calypso. Like, was she manipulating? Was she not? I don't know. It just wasn't very. I don't. It was not good. But Calypso tells him um, to finally kind of give up. And I thought this actually stood out to me as a great Christian picture of um, redemption, of what salvation looks like. Because salvation in Christian theology is not a gaining more control, a grasping onto something with tighter, but rather a letting go. And so, what Odysseus has to finally do is finally admit that he's not in control. The whole time leading up to that, he's in control, or he's trying to be in control. He's defying the gods in order to make sure that he saves all his men, and he believes he can control the outcome. He's even lying to his men in order to get them to where he wants them to go. This is actually kind of um, uh, Elliot Page's character's anger with Odysseus, which again, it all just felt like we were so close to something really good, but it just missed on the right beats. But um, all of Odysseus has continually lied and manipulated to control the outcome on things. Um, and now he finally has to let go and let God. And so that's kind of like a Christian picture of salvation. He has to build a raft and set it adrift in the ocean and just see where the Lord takes him. And he happens to take him directly home to his island of Ithaca. That is actually kind of a picture of Christian salvation. Christian salvation is not you gaining more and more control, but rather admitting finally that you're not in control, that you're not the one running the ship. As the scriptures say, salvation belongs to the Lord, not to you. We want salvation to belong to us. I manipulate, I control, I direct the outcomes, and I get the outcome that I want. And yet, what life does to us is reminds us that ultimately it is God who is in control. And salvation looks a lot like you finally giving in and saying, "Okay, God, you're actually in control, and I'm really not." And then you find out that it's all going to be okay. Now, third, the final Christian theme that I wanted to point out in the Odyssey is that only the lawbreaker can save those under the law. Only the lawbreaker can save those under the law. So at the end of the movie, Odysseus has kind of integrated his PTSD. All right. A lot of people have kind of knocked this twist that Nolan puts on it. I don't mind it. I think everybody can put their own twist on it. I just don't think he does it well enough. I think he doesn't tell his own story well enough. But I think what's happening at the end of the movie is Odysseus has realized. I think what's happening at the end of the movie is that Odysseus has realized that he, in um, building, having the idea for this Trojan horse, has forever broken the world. Um, and because Zeus's law, this kind of social contract that bound the Mediterranean kingdoms, world, whatever, together, um, it has now been unrepairably broken. And because of that, he feels guilt. Um, because he and maybe that's maybe that's his motivation for trying to save all his men. I'm guessing. I thought one of the weaker points of the film was that it felt like two films. It was the beginning of like the beginning part of like the whole Trojan. I mean, it was like the Iliad and the end. That was one movie. This kind of bookend of the Trojan horse and the very end of the movie when he kind of brings back the Trojan horse and comes back and kills all the suitors. And then this whole middle part of him journeying with his men and those two things didn't feel connected very well. Um, but what happens at the end of the movie is that Odysseus gets a new kind of freedom. Um, Everyone else in the kingdom, in the palace of Ithaca, are bound by the law. They cannot do that which they need to do. They're not free to do what they need to do because the law binds them, right? The law is kind of forcing them into this servitude, of this slavery to the law. They cannot cast out these suitors without breaking Zeus's law, even though these suitors are kind of cynically taking advantage of Zeus's law. Now, I thought this whole thing was ham-fisted and dumb. And as the viewer, you ought to feel the tension, and the whole time you just think that's stupid. Everybody would know back then that's not what we're talking about. Cast these guys out. Now, he couldn't cast them out because he just wasn't powerful enough to cast them out. I got that. But the whole like it would be a crime for him to do so. I didn't get that. But when Odysseus comes back and he is able to admit that he is the one who broke Zeus's law, kind of like the original sin, like the breaking of um this law that would have far-reaching consequences um for everyone, because he is the lawbreaker. um he also can become uh the savior in a sense, um because he has here's what I'm trying to say, because he has taken into himself the condemnation of the law. He is therefore able to destroy the enemies of Telemachus or whatever his name is, and Penelope, um, because he's already guilty. And so there's this kind of interesting freedom that Odysseus has because of his condemnation. Because once the law has condemned you, it can't do anything else to you. You know, the worst thing that the law can do is judge you. And once it's already judged you, you're free of it. And I think there is a little picture of what the freedom that Christ brings to people. Not only, first, the freedom that Christ has in that he is the ultimate sinner. He who knew no sin became sin that we might become the righteousness of God. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Jesus himself sinned, but he became sin. He he had imputed onto him the sins of the whole world and was condemned and died, which allows him, especially once he rises from the dead, this extraordinary power over death and sin, um, because it's already done its worst at him. I mean, he's the one who's able to drive out the enemies of God because he's already been condemned. Um, And in the same way, you and I are able to live our lives freely and do what we need to do. This is kind of at the heart of when, Luther gets mischaracterized with this whole like sin boldly thing, but a lot of what he's saying when he says sin boldly is more like don't, you know, get paralysis over whether or not something is right or wrong that you can't act. Like, obviously if something's wrong, don't do it. But if you're not sure something's right or something's wrong and, some kind of like pressing situation, you can't just you're free. You're free from the law. Like the worst thing that could possibly happen to you is that the law would condemn you, declare you to be a sinner, declare you under the judgment of God, and ultimately kill you. That's what it would do. And it already has. You've been baptized into Christ's death. You are dead. You're Odysseus in the throne room. Pluck the bow and go at it. Like you are free. And I thought there's a little picture of the Christian message of Christ absorbing the sin of the world, and that he is the one who's able to say um, that he will be the lawbreaker, so that we might be free, that we might be the righteous. And in the kind of topsy turvy craziness of the gospel, we who are sinners uh, get declared righteous, and he who is righteous takes onto himself the sins of the world. But in doing so, he's able to actually save us in the midst of our own sin. So I don't know if that last part made sense, but the idea that the lawbreaker has the freedom to actually bring about salvation seems like an echo of a story that I've heard before a long time ago in a galaxy not very far away. So that's it for my brief kind of synopsis or analysis of the Christian themes in the Odyssey. I do expect to do a longer kind of dive on Christopher Nolan, his movies, and his theology coming up soon. But thank you, and I hope you have a great week. See ya.